Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Kylee Cast. I'm Kylee Griswold, managing editor at The Federalist. Please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. We have a new channel specifically for the Kylee Cast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So if you are only subscribed to the Federalist Radio Hour, or You're Wrong with Molly Hemingway and David Harsani, two of our other great Federalist podcasts, be sure to subscribe to the Kylee Cast as well so you never miss an episode. Leave us a 5-star review. It's one of the easiest and best ways you can help out the show. And even better yet, if you're just listening to the show, go check out the full video version on my personal YouTube channel or the Federalist channel on Rumble. And then, of course, like and subscribe there too. If you are one of the people who watches on YouTube or Rumble, you will see that we have a special edition of the Kylee Cast today. And that is with three of my Federalist colleagues, Matt Kittle, Eddie Scarry, and Elle Purnell, who are all here today to give their initial reactions to the State of the Union. I'm so excited to hear their hot takes. So why don't we just kick this right off? I want everybody to give Trump's State of the Union an initial grade and maybe note what your favorite moment or what you think was most memorable point of the speech was. Matt Kittle, why don't we kick it off with you?
I'm a tough grader. I always have been. Ask the kids in my house, but I would say an A minus. I thought he did exceptionally well. Everybody's talking about the unprecedented length of the speech, and as a journalist covering the speech, I would say if he could keep that under 2 hours, that would be great. But I think he summed everything up. That the message that he needed to get across, the most important salient thing that he said was when he turned to the entire joint session of Congress, pointed to the left side of the aisle and said, "These people are crazy," because that is exactly what they are. And he did an excellent job of building the case for 2026 and what the difference is between the two sides. And I'm not talking about Republicans and Democrats here, although Democrats have been co-opted by the radical Marxist left, no doubt about it. What I'm talking about is the difference between sane, rational, reasonable, and insane, criminally insane at times. And I thought he just did a fantastic job over and over again, making them have to stand by their insanity and showcasing that for all the world to see. I thought it was genius.
And speaking in the type of language that Americans can relate to and actually want to hear, which is just these people are crazy. Like who doesn't actually talk like that about Democrats? So very, very relatable language from the president there. How about you, Eddie?
I think an A minus is, I'd probably go about the same. It was, it was long. It was long. And I would say really, if you are going to do a speech that long, he did it very well because I was pretty gripped the entire time. It hit a lot of subjects I wanted to hear. And most importantly, I would say, and I wrote about this at the Federalist, just using that opportunity to show the differences between the two parties or who's in power and who's out of power. And he did that over and over again in ways that were both entertaining but also very informative. I think, and I don't want to steal anyone's thunder here, but I know it was a very remarkable moment when he said something to the effect of, "I want you to stand up if you agree with me that the number one job of the American government is to protect its citizens versus protecting illegal aliens." And then he rightly pointed out that not a single Democrat stood up for that. Those are the kind of moments I really enjoyed. As far as it being too long, I just think it was all a pretty good speech. I think even the last like 20, maybe 15, 20 minutes were still good. It was just at that point you're kind of slogging. So I would have probably cut it down a little bit. But even he himself, I like where he actually made the point. He said, "What I really like about this is it gives us a moment to where the American people, when you have every single broadcast network, every single cable news channel, pretty much every major streamer, online streamer is going to be covering this, and you're going to see what the big differences are between us, the Republican Party, the Trump administration, and the Democrats." And I think that was a really good use of time. And no matter who's president, I think that should be the way every single president treats these things.
Absolutely. How about you, Elle?
I was thinking A minus too. And I went in with very low expectations, expecting it to be long and kind of not sure what to expect, whether he was going to be able to keep the momentum up. But sorry, my dog's barking. But I was very pleasantly surprised. I think he did a really great job. I agree, it was long, but he did a good job of projecting, of making it an America 250 themed State of the Union, making it very patriotic, very rah-rah America. When the hockey team came in, it was amazing. Obviously, the moment that Eddie mentioned was like the standout moment of the night, and the moment that if Republican campaign strategists are smart, they'll be blaring in television ads between now and November. But the moment that made me tear up was the moment when the National Guardsman who had been shot in the head in D.C., when they showed him with his family, he was smiling. The president surprised him with the Purple Heart, and just seeing him whole and recovering so well, that was really a sweet moment.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think I'm maybe a little bit kinder of a grader than the rest of you. You all followed Matt Kittle's lead, but I'll grade on a curve, and maybe it's just because of how bad Abigail Spanberger's response was. But I'll give Trump an A, just a straight A. And maybe it's also because I went in with the lowest of low expectations. I was so cynical about how this was going to go, partly because I just am kind of sick of Republicans and how useless they seem to be. Partly because State of the Unions just seem like a chance to rah-rah, talk about all the things you've done, even if you haven't done that much. And I think I was just ready for, a Pam Bondi flavored, look at the S&P 500 type of State of the Union. And instead it was so pro-America, rah-rah. The dichotomy that Trump was able to draw between the Republican vision for the country and the Democrat lack of vision for the country was just so stark and so powerful. And I was dreading the 2-hour long speech because we knew it was going to be a long one. And I really thought it flew by. And I think maybe petered off at the end a little bit, but more so just because I was ready for bed. But in general, I was pretty tuned in for the whole speech. It was just excellent. And I think it just really put into stark contrast, Thomas Sowell's conflict of visions. It's so funny because Democrats and Republicans obviously have always had different ideas about where the country should be headed. But, it's like, okay, we all want to fix the problem of homelessness. So what are the policies we want to see implemented to like bring people out of poverty? Or, we all see this issue over here, but we just disagree on how to get there. And it's so obvious now that we cannot agree on basic goals for the future of the country. We were talking about pro-America versus anti-America. We're talking about pro-borders versus anti-borders, pro-biology about the sexes and truth about the sexes versus complete denial of reality. So we can't even agree on like basic truths. So this conflict of visions is less about policy and more just about what do you even believe about what this country is and what it's for. And I think that that's why the moment where Trump said, "Stand if you believe this," was so powerful. Because it was just so obvious the disdain that half of the country has for law and order and for what actually matters in this country. And yeah, if Republicans are smart, they will clip that for so many ads going into the midterms.
Kylie, what's interesting about that, and it's something that I've thought for a long time, because back when I was growing up, I think probably a lot of you heard the same thing, was that Democrats and Republicans, they want the same things, they just have different beliefs about how to get there. That just is not true anymore. We just
No.
straight up do not want the same things anymore. And that's why I was saying, and I think the president did such a good job of just using this as the opportunity when you have the biggest audience possible, people who really don't even follow politics that much. They're not following the day-to-day like all of us are. They got to see that there are real differences here. It's not small differences like it used to be. It's like things that we fundamentally disagree on and that we want for this country and that we want for the succeeding generations.
Don't forget, folks, Abigail Spanberger is a moderate. I don't know if you knew that. She campaigned on that, and everybody on Tuesday night, all of the moderate corporate media sources out there wanted to make sure that you knew that not only Abigail Spanberger is a moderate, she is a rising star in the Democrat Party. Now take a look at her record and see if she should be the former, or if she is the former, and if she should be the latter. And I think her speech her response the other night showed that she's not ready for prime time, although she is ready to destroy a state.
Yeah, it's like the Wizard of Oz. Pay no attention to the record behind the curtain.
Yes,
Abigail
yes.
Spanberger is such a fake moderate. Yes, yes. I think another thing that put these visions into stark contrast was I was dying at Fox panning over to transgender identifying member of Congress Tim/Sarah McBride right after Trump highlighted the story of Sage Blair, the um, former student in Virginia who was attempted to be trans by the school system and was then trafficked and all of these things against the knowledge of her legal guardians. And just this, like, of course Democrats can't stand for this because they have kowtowed to the most radical side of their party, which elects members of Congress who do not even uphold basic truths about the sexes. And then, yeah, of course, with immigration, we saw that dichotomy on display again. It was just over and over and over. Yeah, it truly remarkable. I also loved, everybody was already riding the rah USA high of the men's hockey team winning the gold against Canada, our authoritarians to the north, in the Olympics. And so it was just so cool to parade them out as one of the first parts of the speech. Like, what a great way to get the energy going. It was just so awesome. And then to see some Democrats not even able to stand for that, like, what a sad, miserable party they are. Elle, you actually wrote a great piece about Democrats' anti-Americanism, and specifically Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, who you identified as a Democrat from Mogadishu. I almost cried of laughter when you wrote that. But maybe you can speak to some of their sour disposition during the speech as well.
Yeah, so I mean, like y'all touched on, the midterms and this year, both parties are going to be trying to set up a contrast between the two. And Trump really did a good job in his whole speech setting up the conservative side of the country as the patriotic, pro-America. He wisely affiliated his State of the Union address with the U.S. hockey team, and he brought out these like war heroes, whether they were 100 years old and fought in World War II or young and just participated in the raid to get Nicolas Maduro. And so it was just this like great American moment. And then you had the Coast Guard rescue swimmer who rescued the girl in Texas. It was just like these sweet, feel-good patriotic moments. You left the speech feeling like proud to be an American, which apparently is also a divisive political opinion. And then it really, really neutered Spanberger's response for him to do that, because then she gets up and she's like, no, stop being patriotic. Like, life is horrible under Trump. Remember, you're supposed to be like under a Nazi regime and life is terrible and Trump is terrible and how dare you enjoy this moment of patriotism. And so obviously like that is Democrats' big push leading into the midterms is your life is horrible. And Trump did a really good job of making people feel like, no, life is like, we're Americans. We're so happy to be Americans. And sure, obviously there's ways, there's lots of policies that could be passed to improve everybody's life. And that's, a question to take up with the Senate Majority Leader. But at the end of the day, it was do you love America? Are you proud to be an American? Versus, does that make you mad? And Trump set that up really well, and Democrats totally played into his hand by showing their disappointment and frustration at that America first.
Elle, we're reporters, and so we have to take this stuff and we have to check the sources, and the whole idea of if your mother tells you she loves you, get a second source kind of thing. All of that said, I'm watching that speech and I'm thinking what I have long thought, but what so many people on the left have told me, that if you're proud to be an American, you are a racist in a systemic system. And what Donald Trump has done, not just in 2.0, but what he has done throughout the political part of his career, has reinforced, told Americans, you don't have to be ashamed of America. It's interesting to see the polling out there when you look at Republicans generally proud of their country and a third of Democrats proud of their country. That's sad. And I think a lot of that began with Barack Obama's apology tour when he first got into office. Mr. Nobel Peace Prize winner. Trump said, no, that's ridiculous. We are a great country. We're an exceptional country. And on this 250th anniversary, birthday of this country, we are going to remember that.
The only reason I was looking down is I was trying to find the numbers because there was this this Gallup poll that's been going around recently. And by political party, they looked at the pride in being an American. And in 2001, 90% of Republicans and 87% of Democrats, pretty similar numbers, were proud to be an American. And now in 2025, Republicans are at 92, so they've gone up 2 points. Democrats are at 36.
That's
And I think part
astounding.
of it too, it's definitely what you mentioned, but it's also, I wonder what percent of those Democrats who are not proud of America just moved here from somewhere else, like Ilhan Omar.
Mm-hmm.
Great point, Elle. That's a great point. I thought another really potent part of the speech, and I didn't think to look back to see whether previous State of the Unions or more recent State of the Unions have addressed this, but I loved Trump's comment on the Christian revival we're experiencing, the way he highlighted Erica Kirk, but also just noted, that aspect of what we've experienced in this country over the past year. Because I know, we've watched poll after poll of just decline in religiosity and church attendance among Americans. That's been happening. That's been a trend that's old. And I don't know what official polls say now, but I think anecdotally, we can probably all point to people we know and things that we've experienced in our own churches or in our own communities of just a revival. It's undeniable. And that was just a really cool thing to include, that it wasn't just this red, white, and blue America, patriotic flair. It was also, even nodding to our first principles and nodding to the importance of America being a Christian nation and how we've experienced that over the past year, that I thought was a cool inclusion by Trump's team.
I agree. I think that faith issue obviously has been intensifying. It's a reawakening. That we've seen many of those in this country's history, because at its core, it's still there. But sometimes we think, my God, given the state of events, we've lost that central focus in our lives. And I think so many people have this huge void, and they're filling it with this garbage that is coming from the left, which makes the void even bigger and bigger. And I think that is a big part of what is ripping up this country today. But I think everything kind of changed. We had a pause, and then we had reflection following the death of Charlie Kirk, the assassination, not just the death, I mean the cold-blooded murder of a guy who was not only a young voice of conservative principles, he was an evangelizing force in this country. People were waking up not only to the politics of things, but to the religion of things, the faith matters that are so critical to this exceptional republic.
Mm-hmm. And maybe that speaks to some of the difference in pride in being in America or not between the parties as well, where, for many Republicans, or specifically many conservative Americans, their faith is foundational to their lives. They go to church, they are very involved in their communities, they have families, and so when that is the foundation of your life, politics kind of takes a back burner. You don't fall for as much of the rage bait. It's just kind of like you know why you believe what you do, and that faith infuses a lot of your political activism, because it's not political activism so much as worldview religious activism, to protect children from the abortion scourge, to protect children from transgenderism, to build strong families and strong communities. Whereas on the left, when you see the breakdown of religiosity and the ascendance of politics as religion, but it's just this religion of no grace, no forgiveness, just bitterness and anger. And I mean, we saw this with the activists in Minneapolis most recently, just this flashpoint of just this angry, hate-filled politics that just is so godless. And, no wonder these people are not proud to be Americans, because they don't believe in the fundamental things that make this country great, which starts with faith, freedom, family, these very basic foundational principles that so many conservatives do still believe in. Elle, you brought up Abigail Spanberger's response. That's a great segue to talk about that. Did anybody stay awake for that? And how would you grade her response? What were your thoughts on that? Eddie, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, I watched the rebuttal, and what was the most striking thing about it, I will say, much of the content I didn't even catch because we had just finished up the 2 hour speech. But what was very distracting about it was that, and I know what they were doing. I appreciate the effort because, when usually the rebuttal is you have somebody standing at a podium, they're by themselves in the room, and they give up after, watching an hour or whatever it is of the president with all these people, a full room, and they're clapping. You have a lot of people clapping, and there's like a lot of dynamics at play there. You then switch to the rebuttal, and it's just one person, and it often falls very flat. So, what they tried to do in this case, which I don't know that I've ever seen this in a rebuttal speech before, was they had they put people in the room to make it look like she had an audience. But the reason why that didn't really work was because they were clearly told when there must have been a sign, like literally a sign that went up and said clap and then stop clapping,
Mm-hmm.
clap, stop clapping,
Please
because it was
clap.
so abrupt. They would immediately start clapping, and it was so not spontaneous. They were clapping like in unison, and then immediately it would stop so that she could continue. So I found it very distracting. I really feel, I mean, I was almost going to say they could have picked somebody better, but I don't know who that would have been. I think that the rebuttal that they gave, maybe that was last year, the rebuttal to Trump's first address to the nation last year. That was actually much more attractive and more appealing than this one was. I'm not sure what the calculus was going with her. Maybe like Matt Kittle said, they're really trying to sell the governor of Virginia as a moderate. But I would just think they could have picked somebody else.
They would have picked Gavin Newsom, but he couldn't read, so they couldn't go with him.
The SAT problem. That's going to dog him for a long time, isn't it?
Yep. Matt, what did you think?
I thought it was god awful. I agree with Eddie. I think it was choreographed and staged like most of the performative nonsense on the left is. And it was just another, and I guess the only thing that was missing from that speech ultimately was I really thought at any time a grown man in a frog costume was going to hop on in because that's become the symbol of the resistance movement in America. But Elle talked about it before, and it's so silly. But unfortunately, I wrote about this earlier this week, the night of the State of the Union address. You have a media, a corporate media, the accomplice, Pravda Press, that have spent years just with negative coverage, trying to beat down everything, even the accomplishments of the president, and there have been many. Our friends over at the Media Research Center have been looking at this for a long time. His first 100 days in office in Trump 2.0, 92% negative coverage. We've all reported on, the late night comedians, so to speak. They've had one Republican or conservative guest in the year, and so when you have all of that coordinated, and that's what it is, negative coverage of an administration. It was nice to see, and I understand why Trump wanted to take 2+ hours, because he gets no time anywhere else. They had to give him this time, and he was able to just expertly describe the differences as we talked about before. And then when you got to Abigail Spanberger, after all of this and the moments of pride in America and the moments of clear vision of where the country is going and where the president would like to take the country and those America First values, you got Abigail Spanberger, who, is the walking example of the left's dystopic look at America, its vision, of burning it down to recreate it in their own Marxist image. And I think that, that was a very powerful contrast.
Elle, how about you?
Yeah, I thought her speech was very wooden, and I'm not just saying that because her face didn't move. But it was very, like, you could tell it was kind of like a high schooler giving a speech, in that she was very just reading off the teleprompter, except for the one point where she lost her place and made it very obvious. Like, it's hard to follow Trump, right? Because he just comes in and he ad-libs and he's got all this energy, and then she just came in and, like, I did stay up and listen to the whole thing and then wrote afterwards. But then as I was writing, I went back to review the transcript of her speech, and I was like, she said this? I don't remember her saying this. Like, it was very easy to tune out, and maybe that's just because it was late at night. But I appreciated that it was fairly short. I don't know how long they are on average, but it felt like it was over quickly. Maybe because she wasn't putting a lot of energy into it. But it was she didn't make a ton of big missteps, but I thought it was kind of a wasted opportunity too, in that she didn't put a lot of, you didn't really think that she believed what she was saying. And maybe that's just because she's not a very good public speaker, but it was a very forgettable follow-up. But I mean, if you compare it to the alternative programming that was going on the National Mall, it was certainly better than that.
It was
Yeah,
calmer.
No kidding. I just kind of thought it fell flat. Like, it had all of these issues with the please clap flavor, and yeah, she's not a very good public speaker, and she was also talking quickly, so she kind of rushed through it and, lost her place or whatever. But it's also just like, lady, we just watched 2 hours of like pro-America programming where your party sat there like sourpusses and or like, launched expletives at the president, but then we're supposed to take your rebuttal seriously as if like you are representing the real state of America. It's just like nobody's buying what you're selling, kind of was how I took it. And at the same time, I felt very similarly where as I'm listening, I'm like, when you read you read a paragraph and you're like, I have no idea what I just read because I was thinking about something else. That's how I felt listening to Abigail Spanberger's speech, where it's like, I'm watching your lips move, I'm hearing words, but I'm not even listening because I'm so not buying what you're selling. That's how I felt
Well,
with
and
the whole speech.
It also made
it's
it
the problem that, sorry, Elle, just real quick. It's just the problem that Democrats are in right now, and they have been in. And you can look at polls, and you can see that supposedly Trump is unpopular and his policies are unpopular. But Democrats, when they talk about offering an alternative, they talk about we have to offer the alternative to Trump. What is the alternative to the major issues that were talked about during that State of the Union speech? You either have an open border or it's closed. You have controlled immigration or you don't. You can you either dump money into the economy, print money into the economy, raise inflation, or you don't, and you try to cut spending. You're either tough on crime and you believe in locking up criminals, or you don't. So there's no moderate middle ground on any of these issues. You either deport people because they're here illegally, or you don't, or you don't believe in controlling immigration. You don't believe in borders. When Democrats keep saying we have to offer an alternative, there is no alternative to the right, or there is, but it's not popular. The alternative that they want to offer is not popular. So when you have someone who is tasked with getting up and offering the alternative as if they're going to do the complete opposite, and that's all they've got at this moment is doing the complete opposite, Americans are reminded, they look at that and go, I didn't like that when you did it the last time. I'm not going to do it again.
Well, yeah, it also, just to build on that, it made it very obvious that Democrats, not only do they not mind shamelessly lying, they're depending on, the low information voters whose ballots they can harvest, who are insulated in the bubble of the corporate press and its coverage. But also, they don't really mind if you know that. Because Abigail Spanberger is, I'm a Virginia resident, and every time she opens her mouth about affordability, it's laughable. I had a friend whose energy bill went from like about $100 to $400 in a month.
Oh my word.
And so, like, for her to get up there and talk about affordability and to say with a very straight face, that she's making things more affordable for Virginians. Like, they're not even trying to be convincing. They're just counting on having a population that will believe every word they say.
And she had to follow not only Donald Trump, she had to follow the antics of her own party, which were on full display. I think that nothing better encapsulated the Democrats that night than the photo that went with Elle's exceptional piece on the two different visions of America.
Yes.
You see Rashida Tlaib just seething with anger, just all of this hatred for this man, and Ilhan Omar, the same thing. They just looked absolutely miserable and furious. Now that's going to play well with the we hate Trump and that's the only issue that we're dealing with. But for middle America and a lot of independents who may have some misgivings about Donald Trump here or there, I think that was an iconic image and everybody saw it. And it's really, really telling when it is paused. You can see that hatred.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think also like Democrats are they're for the midterms. They're running on hatred of Trump, and it's such a polarized environment right now that you can get a lot of people to just be unhappy with how things currently are. But it's a reminder that when voters see Democrats, they don't like what they see. When they see Democrats cheering for trans and kids, or refusing to stand up for American citizens over illegal aliens, or defending violent murderers and rapists who have come here illegally, or fighting against law enforcement. Like when Democrats have airtime, generally they're doing things that voters don't like. They don't have a positive vision, like Eddie said, to sell to the American people. So I think it was very smart for Trump to use some of his time at the State of the Union to kind of put the spotlight back on Democrats who have not had the spotlight as much since they're not in power.
And when do they have fun? Like, I would genuinely ask that. When is the last time I genuinely saw? Because I remember during the Obama years, there were times when they looked like they were having fun, especially like Hollywood. There was this glamour around Obama. But even if you go to the not too distant past of Brat Summer and the vibes and the joy of Kamala, that was so fake, and you can it is so obviously fake. And that is really the biggest problem that party has right now. It's this fakery, this fraudulence. Because even when they talk about, when you watch someone well, first you have James Talarico of Texas running for U.S. Senate in Texas, and he's selling this perverse, obviously not in any way in line with Christianity, the biblical teaching, and yet he swears that it is. And you don't have to be a very religious person. I'm not. I am a Christian, but not a very religious person. I look at him swearing that Jesus, he was so indifferent to abortion. Jesus would have been so indifferent to abortion. I'm like, that is just a lie. You look at Gavin Newsom now making the tours, governor of California, making tours on the podcast and trying to talk like he's this jock, this bro, and it's this selling the masculinity, and it reeks of fakery, and that's on the superficial level. But then you look at the policy level, and it's the same thing when they talk about. As you were just saying, we were talking about affordability. That's a nice issue for them right now because the public is understandably frustrated with prices and the stubborn high prices. They're very frustrated. But Democrats, when they start talking about how, well, they've got the answer to affordability, that it reeks of fake. Because, they're the ones, as the president said during his speech, that was like, I think my favorite moment, the funniest moment, where he says, you guys did that. You guys caused this problem. And he looked right at them and said that. I think that people know that, and just to use that and think that you can use it as like a political weapon at the moment, people are looking at it, it's just fake, and the whole party just has such a problem with fakery. They fake joy, which is very, very sad.
That's such a great point,
Eddie,
Eddie.
well, wait a minute. Don't you? I remember vividly how much joy Tampon Tim Walz was having. Remember when he was loading his gun? Right? And badly. Remember the flannel shirts? Yeah, he was having all kinds of joy. Actually, the last time I remember joy with any Democrat, I remember it clearly. It was Gavin Newsom back in the middle of COVID, his lockdowns, and he was just having a delightful time at that restaurant, wasn't he? Just laughing and enjoying while he locked the rest of his state down. I remember that was a joyful moment for those folks.
That's true. I think that Democrats feel no joy greater than when they're and I mean this, when they are like crushing the middle class, crushing the American independence spirit, they really do, I think, get something out of that.
That the fakery is such a good point too, Eddie, because and the fun. Like you could tell multiple times during Trump's speech, like he's having a good time. And JD Vance is laughing behind him. It comes off as very authentic. Like when he's ad-libbing, maybe this wasn't an ad-lib, I forget. But just like when he makes the comment about, is Nancy Pelosi here, after he brings up insider trading, like that was genuinely funny. And like Americans who are tuned in at all are gonna find that funny, because that's like, a hilarious joke, non-joke from Trump. And there were several other times through his speech where he's like laughing through things, or when he's joking with the US hockey goalie about like, did you do that move on purpose, or did you get a little bit lucky, and it's like,
Mhm.
this is genuinely fun. And also, like, when Trump honors the US hockey team, you believe him. When he honors American
Oh, yeah.
heroes, you believe him, because this is the spirit of the conservative side of the aisle. It's like, if Gavin Newsom got up there and gave the exact same speech Trump did, you would not believe a word of it, because it's like, dude, you're the guy who cleans up your streets for Xi Jinping, but can't be bothered to clean them up for the residents that elected you. Like, it's just so unbelievable when Democrats try to do the authentic, pro-America shtick. It's like, you don't care about this country, which is why you let its borders be overrun. But when Trump, does a pro-America thing, and JD's standing for it, and the Republicans are standing for it, it's like, yeah, I believe you, because the policies that you support back this up. It's not fake. And the joy that you exude is not fake. Like, I believe I'm buying what you're selling, unlike Abigail Spanberger. Completely different vibe. Elle, you brought up the propaganda press bubble when you were talking about Abigail Spanberger. Let's talk media coverage of the State of the Union generally, because surely there was nothing the media could disagree with or propagandize about in response. What were some of the most egregious responses you saw from members of the corporate media?
This idea that Abigail Spansberger, which that name is just so insane to me. I hate saying that name.
It doesn't sound
Spansberger.
moderate, does it? Abigail
No, it's kind of a
Spanberger.
scary name.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
very scary name. I think just this, and you see this a lot with the media. Whenever there is some kind of rebuttal or counter to Trump, this hyping up, this fake hyping up of this person as though they're the appealing. The last time I think that was genuine in any way was the last rebuttal. I can't remember her name. I think she's out of Michigan, House representative now, but she gave a pretty decent speech. But the thing was that she didn't talk about any of the things that Democrats were known for just 1 year prior. Just nothing about affordability, nothing about the crime, nothing about the border. Not talked about none of those things, because Democrats were so unpopular in all of those things. So when you had the media come out and say, "Oh, that was actually a pretty decent speech," I think that they were right about that. But in this case, no, just more fakery of like, "Oh yeah, that's that moderate who's shown what it's like to win a swing state." Virginia's not really a swing state anymore, but for a Democrat to win a statewide election, I saw a lot of that after the rebuttal.
So I have two favorites. One was the Washington Post, which said that Trump's speech took a darker turn when he asked Democrats if they would stand to agree with the statement that they should protect American citizens
Yes.
and illegal aliens. That, to the Washington Post, that was a very dark moment. Even though that's a sentiment that radical right wingers like former President Jimmy Carter have said as much in their own speeches. So that was one favorite. And then another favorite was the New York Times. So they took this quote of Trump's from the speech. Trump said, "We are deporting illegal alien criminals from our country at record numbers, and we're getting them the hell out of here fast." That's a very true statement. Like, no one can disagree with that, except for the New York Times, which says that that claim is exaggerated. And their reasoning for that is, they say, the majority of people detained by immigration officials do not have criminal convictions. And by criminal convictions, they mean convictions for crimes other than crossing the border illegally. But it was so funny because under that, then they put a graph and it compares the deportations under Trump and the deportations under Biden. And Trump was still deporting more criminals, still deporting criminals at record numbers. He's just also deporting people who have committed the crime of crossing the border illegally at record numbers too. But the New York Times decided to fact check that with a statement that did not contradict the statement that Trump made, and that was one of
There
my
was also this weird, trifling one that I saw on CNN with their little nerd fact checker named Daniel Dale, who he there was a part in the speech where, and I mean, I thought it was kind of, I didn't know if I was learning new information or what, but where Trump said in his speech, he referred to the young woman, tragic story of the young woman in Charlotte who was stabbed in the neck on the bus from behind. That's a story about crime, as we all know, and how, and the permissive nature of Democrats with crime. Very important point to make. The president did, for some reason, claim that the attacker was let in through open borders under the Biden administration. I don't know that there's any proof of that, but that CNN decided to bring in their little nerd Daniel Dale to fact check that and call it a lie and say that, well, there's absolutely no proof that this guy was an illegal alien. Talk about missing the point. Missing the point of why he even told that story. So yeah, that was just one of those trifling things that the media is very, very good at doing these days.
Well, and that's
pointing out
missing
that
missing the
guy
point is exactly
homegrown.
what they do. Yes, over and over again. I'm sorry, I'll go ahead.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that pointing out that that guy was a homegrown product of Democrat policies is not
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
True.
The worst one that I saw, speaking of trifling, was the Associated Press. And if you are looking for some integrity from fact checking, you will not look at the Associated Press. But what they said was Trump was lying when he said the revolution of 1776 continues today. And they said, I'm not kidding you, they said something to the effect that, no, the Revolutionary War ended in the 1700s.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it was so obtuse. It was you would have to be lobotomized to think that was what Trump was saying, that the Revolutionary War continued to this day. He's talking about, obviously, the 250th birthday of the United States of America and that revolutionary spirit that continues in a land that is marked by independent, self-governing individuals, or at least it was until the Leviathan of the administrative state and big government took over. But yeah, that's the sort of nonsense that we deal with every day, and I think the Federalist does a great job of pointing that out to anybody who wants to see it.
That's so embarrassing. Imagine being that dense and obtuse that's your big fact check. Wow. Wow. I also thought there seemed to be a lot of obfuscation of the Democrats sitting down for a lot of parts of the speech. And I know, it's hard to know how much of that is intentional when it comes to the camera angles, because, a lot of these are cameras that are just in the House gallery. And I doubt that a lot of what you're seeing is like intentionally hiding the Democrats sitting. But in the coverage of it, you certainly saw, I think from the Washington Post, I forget the roundup of outlets that just, breezed past the fact that Democrats stayed seated and refused to support these 80-20 things like securing the border and promoting, U.S. team sports and, law and order, crime, whatever. Just.
And now that you bring that up, because it's making me remember what it was like under the first term and whenever we had a State of the Union with Trump giving, and the Democrat Party was a lot more cohesive and therefore stronger, I would say, because they were all just really united against getting Trump out of office because they knew that the next election was coming around. But if you look at the difference in the way that the media treated it, it was very much to emphasize what Democrats were doing. How were they responding? You might remember there was that one State of the Union where basically all the women wore white, that I think had something to do with abortion or something. But, it was these dramatic displays and the media talking about, the media really branded it and hyped it up as like, this is the resistance. This was the resistance to Trump. And they really focused on it. This time, to your point, you didn't see a lot of that. You didn't see about, because there were some pretty hysterical moments with Rashida Tlaib chanting KKK when everyone else was yelling USA. And then you had Ilhan Omar looking every bit as crazy as she is, screaming out. So, we just got off looking at just seeing how corrupt the Somali community is in her state. And then to see her like kind of just fulfilling this negative stereotype of like where she's from and everything, it was just a really bad look. And I think that there's a lot to be said about the media saying, let's not talk about that. Just how repulsive and gross that side was. Let's talk about other things.
Let's talk about the dark turn that Trump's speech took.
Right.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Kylie, you said
Yeah.
you didn't think the camera angles was deliberate, and I have to disagree. I was watching it on NBC, and when they showed Team USA, I was like, okay, are the Democrats standing up? Because, they're not going to stand up for anything that looks good for Trump. And my screen just, like, they wouldn't show it. So I don't, and I'm not sure if there were some networks that were in the pool or if it was all one pool. I think I had different angles than the people that were watching on C-SPAN, but I do think there was so many times that the camera angles were suspiciously avoiding showing the Democrat pout session that I did wonder if it was deliberate.
Yeah, I did have the same questions actually. I'm not saying that it definitely was not deliberate. I'm just saying like I don't know. It's hard to know what exactly is happening with the camera angles because I don't know where everyone's feed was coming from. But I did notice too. I was watching on CBS and people on our team would be asking, "What are the Democrats doing right now?" And I'm like, "I have no idea because we're only getting one angle." And it always seemed to be pointed at either Trump or the subject of who Trump was talking about. There was just really never any panning to the floor of the gallery at all. So it was just really hard to tell, but I certainly wouldn't put it past the media to only zero in on those angles to hide the fact that Democrats were sitting. I mean, of course not. We don't hate the media enough. These people are corrupt in every way imaginable and then some. So yeah, I'm completely with you. I think a lot of it was probably intentional too, but it's hard to ascribe motive because I don't know where they're getting their feed, but yeah, could not agree more. All right, we only have a few minutes left here. We lost Matt Kittle, who's having internet issues, so rest in peace, Matt. We'll catch you next time. But before we go, I want to talk about the midterms and what Republicans need to do because it's great to finish a Trump speech and feel energized and feel like, yeah, he loves America. Republicans are on the right track. But when you think about a lot of the successes that Trump touted during his speech, many of them come down to executive orders, and he's kind of a one-man show in many ways. He and a few of his cabinet members who are really getting things done. And then you look at the dysfunctional GOP Congress, who appears to be just lazy, sitting on their hands, and or just like incapable of getting anything done. There's no grit, there's no stamina, there's no will to win apparently among Republicans. And so, Trump's speech would be great if we were having the midterms tomorrow, but we're not. We've got 8 months. So, what in your mind do Republicans need to do to energize voters before the midterms? And I think the Save America Act has a lot to do with this, but how can Republicans get that done and what else can they do to keep the base energized for the next 8 months?
Yeah, so I mean, Trump gave people a lot of reasons to vote for him on Tuesday night, but at the end of the day, he's not on the ballot this November. He's not going to be on the ballot again. And so Republicans, fundamentally, they just need to give people a reason to vote for them, to turn out for them. I think Republicans need to be serious about building their ground game. There was a big ground game in 2024. A lot of that was due to Charlie Kirk and TPUSA. I haven't heard a lot about their ground game. I'm not seeing a lot right now in Virginia with this referendum on Democrats gerrymandering coming up in April. And so I think Republicans need to really get as serious about ground game as they were in 2024 and keep building that and not wait until a month before the election to start thinking about ballot chasing if they want to win. And then, I mean, they need to pass the Save America Act. That's a flagship piece of legislation. And generally, pass more of Trump's nominees. They're just giving the impression to Americans that they're not working very hard. The hardest I think they have appeared to work was to potentially extend the Obamacare subsidies. And while that fell through, they gave the appearance that they were working very hard, some of them to extend to bail out Obamacare. So I want to see that level of effort coming to things that I as a voter care about, that other voters care about too.
Yeah, there's a lot of time. There's a lot of time between here and the election, but it does go by very, very fast. I think that the best thing for Republicans to do if they're going to in any way mitigate their losses in the midterm is just they have to wake up and realize that it's coming whether they like it or not, and they might as well shoot for the stars while they've got the time. And I understand the pressures of, campaigning, and you're trying to save your seat and you don't want to do anything that's going to upset anybody, but it's coming whether they like it or not. And Trump, like we were just talking about, that's one guy. You can't hang up everything on him. In some ways, I think that he kind of brings this on himself, and just that he likes doing things on his own. He's a business guy. You make decisions. You run a company. You make the decision, and then things just start moving. It doesn't really work that way in government. But at the same time, Republicans in Congress, that's their own branch of government. They have agency. They can say, all right, well, let's get moving. Instead, you get quotes all the time where they say, well, the president's going to have to get involved in this. We're going to have to hear from the president on this. No, you're Congress. You have your own leader there. You have the House Speaker. You have the Senate majority. It's time to just get moving. You're going to have to do the SAVE Act. You can introduce any number of bills on any number of topics, and that doesn't mean they're going to have to go through. But people are going to have to see, okay, those are your priorities. That's the Republican priorities. What's the Democrat priority, and what's the alternative? What is it that they'd rather focus on? What is it? What is it that aligns with my views? And if Republicans can't even do that, then they're looking at a really big mess in November. So I think the best thing they can do is, again, just wake up and start moving bills, start introducing legislation. And at a minimum, you can show the contrast and say Democrats won't even support this. They won't support voter ID. They won't support more money for the Department of Homeland Security. They're keeping people out of TSA. They're slowing down the airports. They're putting the country at risk. Do that over and over again, and at least people get to see that there is a real difference heading into November.
Yes, make Democrats defend their opposition to voter ID and these other measures. Implement, get on the talking filibuster, get these people on the record, make them explain their vote. All of these procedural maneuvers from Republicans, John Thune saying, "Oh, we're going to get a vote on this," or whatever, rather than saying we're going to pass this, or we're going to use the talking filibuster. It's so empty. It's like, when it comes to Republicans, what are you expecting? Vibes, white papers, essays? When it comes to Trump, no. When it comes to Congress, yes, that's exactly what we're expecting. And voters need to see more than that. Elle, I cut you off.
Oh, you're good. I was just going to say that point about forcing Democrats to vote against something. I think that's really important, going back to what we were talking about with the State of the Union, was there hasn't been a lot of spotlight on Democrats and their insanity. And so if you have them voting against, give them the opportunity to vote for, they will inevitably vote against these 80-20 issues. I think that's a strategy that I'm really surprised that Republicans have not taken more advantage of.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm not that.
Democrats,
they should.
Right. Democrats have done a really good job of making their platform just be opposition to Trump and opposition to Republicans. Republicans are not as good at that. And we are not going to win the midterms. The MAGA base is not energized just because we're not Democrats, the same way that Democrats get energized just because Democrats are not Donald Trump. And I think you're right. Trump is not going to be on the ballot in the midterms, and we need to do a much better job of telling voters why they should care. And it's not just, we're not as crazy as Democrats. It's here's the vision we have to offer the American people. And it's not just Donald Trump being at the top of the ticket, because that's not going to work in these midterms. So Eddie, Elle, and Matt, rest in peace. Thank you all so much for joining me today. It was great chatting with you about the State of the Union, and I can't wait to have you back again soon.
Thanks, Kylie.
Sounds good.
Thank you so much for tuning into this week's episode of the Kylee Cast. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a 5-star review. It is truly one of the easiest and best ways you can help out the show. If you'd like to email the show, you can do so at radio@thefederalist.com. We would love to hear from you. I will be back next week with more. So until then, just remember, the truth hurts, but it won't kill you.